Hi Year 10, hope you're all doing really well. Welcome back. It's Tuesday, period 1, and today we're going to be looking at how to answer the second unseen poetry question. So here's our question, which we also looked at the other day. In Paris Review and Courier in the Winter, the speakers describe their feelings about love. What are the similarities and or differences between the ways the poets present these feelings? So you'll always have one question about one unseen poem and then this second one tagged on, comparing it to another one. It's only worth 8 marks, so we don't want to get too worried about this question, which comes right at the end of the second literature paper. But at the same time, we'd like to get those 8 marks if we possibly can. Because it's the shortest and the smallest question on the paper, we've only got time probably to do 2 paragraphs, and we might spend about 15 minutes writing them after we've had a chance to read both the poems and have a little bit of thinking time and planning time. Okay, well, talking about thinking and planning, at the end of Friday's video I gave you the task that's on the board. That's going to be useful for us today in terms of thinking, well, what would we put to answer that question? So I'm going to suggest you pause the video now and just have a look back at, first of all, both the 2 poems, and secondly, what did you note down on Friday in terms of similarities and differences and quotes that you might use to back those up. So pause the video now, take a little bit of time to do that, and I will see you back here again when you're ready. See you shortly. Okay, so you've had a chance to look back at the 2 poems and possible connections you could make. Obviously, you'll only need a couple of similarities or differences because you've only got a couple of paragraphs to write. What's going to go into those paragraphs? Well, as you know, I tend to use the mark scheme as a starting point because in that way you're going to make sure you're actually including in your answer what the examiner is going to give you credit for. So if we look here, there's 4 levels going up to 8 marks, and each level has 2 bullet points, but actually both the bullet points focus on the same sorts of things. So all the way through we've got this idea of comparison. Yeah? So that's why each paragraph is going to be about a similarity or a difference, because there's a big focus on comparing the 2 poems. The other focus is on the writer's methods. So if you look at both bullet points, we've got the writer's use of language and or structure, and we've got the effects of the writer's method. So it's mentioned twice, and that's common as we go up through to 5 and 6 marks. Again, the effects of the writer's methods, the writer's use of language and structure, and exactly the same up here in the top of the mark scheme as well. So it's about comparison and it's about the writer's methods, the writer's choices. We need to be focused on those 2 things all the way through. Apart from that, we might say, right, okay, we know it's about the effect of what the writer's done. And to pick up more marks, we're going to be thinking about going into more detail. So we might examine those effects when we're getting up here, and then we're exploring those effects when we're getting up here. So I'll talk about those layers of meaning and what the difference might look like between these level 2, 3 and 4 answers. Or we're thinking in terms of grades, well, maybe around here we're getting our grade 4, grade 6, 7 and up to grade 8, 9. Okay, so let's have a look then. We've got 2 paragraphs to write, and we know that there's this focus on comparison, so we're going to start off with comparison, and we know that we need to focus on the writer's method. So when we explain the quotes we selected, we'll keep coming back to that idea of the writer's methods. What we also might do at the end of our paragraph is develop that comparison. So we lift it up to that top level of exploring. And how do we develop the comparison? Well, I'll talk a bit more about that in an example as we go along. Right, so this is a task again that's set on Friday. Pick out some similarities or differences with quotes. Well, I've had a go at that myself. You can see here just one similarity. Both the poems show the pain that love can cause. Lots of you talked about that in your feedback last week, and there's my 2 quotes. Yeah, one from In Paris Review, first stanza, I'm one of you talking wounded, and one from Cory in the Winter in the final stanza, final line in fact, he had melted by noon. Okay, so they're the two quotes I'm going to use. You might obviously pick different quotes and different points of comparison, but hopefully with this example I can show you the sort of way you construct an answer in order to get full marks. So here we go. We've got our similarity between the two poems. They both show the pain that love can cause. We're going to use this method and we're going to use these quotes. Okay, so our first quote, I'm one of you talking wounded, we'll start with that. So just slot the quote in there after the initial comparison at the start of the paragraph, and then we've got our explanation. The adjective wounded shows he's been hurt by love. Well, we explained what that quote shows, linked to the question, feelings about love, and we've also got that focus on method. Yeah, it's an adjective. Okay, so that does the job. But of course, we want to go into detail. So we talked about before this difference between just identifying the effect, examining, and exploring. Yeah, they're the words that are used in the mark scheme, but really all it's referring to is different levels of detail, different levels of focus. So our initial sentence here, he's been hurt by love. We've explained the effect. We're at level 2. We examine it, we're going to talk a bit more about it. Well, this word creates a metaphor where sadness is represented by a physical injury. We're now at the stage where we're examining. If we want to get to full marks, grade 9, a bit more is needed. What does this metaphor imply? Well, it implies he's been damaged as a person by his experiences and relationships. So you can see that 3-part sentence shows up to here, we're in level 2, up to here, level 3, up to here, level 4. So you can see the kind of the difference between you're doing the exact same thing, but you're doing it in more detail to go from roughly grade 4-5 up to 6-7 up to grade 9. Okay, and then we just need to add in similar for our second quote. So here we go. In Cory in the Winter, the quote is melted by noon. Okay, well, we need to explain that. What is this poem melting? Why is that going to cause pain? Because his gesture that's supposed to represent his love disappears without ever being seen. And focusing on the methods, we can say, well, that melting snow is a metaphor for his love which fades away into nothing. Okay, all good. So paragraph's more or less done there. If we're going to do a couple of paragraphs like this, we're probably going to be in that top band. Yeah, aiming for those top grades. It was one of the things we mentioned earlier, which is developing this comparison. So how do we do that? Okay, we've explained the quotes in plenty of detail. We've focused on methods. How do we develop the comparison? Well, a couple of suggestions for how we could do that in this paragraph to make sure we're getting 8 out of 8, make sure we're getting full marks. Okay, the first thing we could do is look at the beginning of the paragraph. Okay, previously said a similarity between the two poems is they both show the pain love can cause. Well, we know from looking at the mark scheme that there's a big focus on methods. Yeah, and we know from looking at the question asks us, what are the similarities and differences between the ways that the writers have shown feelings? Well, they're both using a metaphor. So we're just tightening up that first sentence, making it a bit more precise. Okay, what about the end of the paragraph? Can we add anything on? Yeah, we can. Okay, so although this paragraph's about a similarity, we can develop that comparison by pointing out a difference within it. Okay, so in Cory in the Winter, the image of loneliness and pain comes at the end of the poem, whereas in Paris, I've shortened the title of the poem there, which is fine to do. In Paris, the pain is at the beginning, and by the end, the mood is more hopeful. Okay, so we're being a bit more subtle there. We're acknowledging, yes, they both show pain, but they both show pain in this slightly different way. Yeah, so both tightening up that first sentence, making it a bit more precise, or that extra bit of consideration of the connection between the poems at the end. Both of those things are ways in which you can just add that extra layer, take you up towards full marks. Okay, so start off with a comparison, explaining quotes in both poems, linked to the writer's methods, and then just developing that comparison precisely if we can to move towards full marks. And that's how you do a paragraph for the second unseen question. Okay, so in the remaining time during this session, I would suggest have a go yourself. Okay, here's the structure. You can look back at the example that I've just talked you through. Could you do another paragraph for that question, focusing on a different similarity or difference between the two poems that we've looked at? Okay, and once you've had a chance to go and have a go at that, check back on Show My Homework, because period 2 I'll have another unseen poem for you to read, and let me know what you think about. Okay, so that's the end of this particular video. Until I see you next, keep reading, keep smiling and keep safe, and hopefully I will see you very, very soon.